So people ask, how accurate is the King James Bible? And I downloaded a file of the King James Bible that's got the complete text. And then I said, but in IT, if you want to know if a file is complete, you do a checksum on the file. And that's a technique to make sure that every letter is upper and lower case is correct, every space is correct, every dot, every single character in that file is correct and accurate. And I took this file and I said, let me run a checksum on this file. Now the method I used was, I take the first line and then I take the first character, and I take the value of the first character, and then I add double the value of the second character, then the value of the third letter plus double the value of the fourth letter. I go through the whole file like that. And to put values to the letters, I said, well, let's use ASCII, because ASCII's got a value to every single character that's used in the file. And once you've got added all these characters and using this ASCII, so there you can see upper and lower case, everything's got a value. So once I've got the total, then I need an input value, and that input value I take and I deduct it from the final total I get, and I keep on deducting until I get a number that's less than this input value, and that final value is then the checksum value. So I prayed about this value and I woke up and I had the number 42 in my mind. And 42, if you know the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, was the answer to the ultimate question of life, universe, and everything. So I thought, well, that's not the number I would have chosen, but that's the number I got, so let me put it in, and it would be very appropriate because the King James Bible was the answer to the ultimate question of life, universe, and everything to millions of people. And I got the output value 7, which is a very significant number in the Bible. It's often associated with God. So then I put in Jesus, and I said, how many times is Jesus mentioned in the Bible? But I put in Jesus with the boundaries is the beginning, it's got a space and a space in the end, or it's the first letter on a new line or the last letter on a line, and upper and lower case. So in that first search criteria, it actually excluded where there's a dot or any character adjacent to the word Jesus. And I got 777, which is just another confirmation that this is an accurate text. So let's see how we got the King James Bible. So God used 44 people, and every word they wrote down was from God. And it was 66 books. So if you reject the Bible, you actually reject 66 historical books that was combined into a single book. So don't think it's a single book that you're rejecting, it's 66 historical books. And by about the year 2050 after Christ, the Hebrews took the books that they thought was appropriate and combined that into a canon. And a canon is just a combination of books. And then by about 367, the New Testament books was combined. And by that time, it was decided what is going to go into the Bible. And there was a lot of events in between that some historical people will be better at to explain. But by about 1055 after Christ, the chapters and the verse numbers was in the Bible. in all these books. And then by 1611, the King James version was translated. And in translating this, it was a huge project. A lot of people were involved, and a lot of copies of the Bible that was handwritten copies of the original Bibles that they could get was combined into this single book. And by 1769 about, there was a standardized British, English-British spelling, and that was incorporated into the King James Version. And in 1963, the ASCII standard was introduced, and then that's the standard I used. And I said, well, if God influenced this book from the beginning, surely He would have made sure that this document was accurate, and that every character, every upper, lower case, everything is correct in this book. Because the King James Bible became the most widely printed book in the history of the world. And at that stage, the past 400 years, for quite a bit of that time, the British Empire was the biggest empire in the world. And everywhere that the British went, the King James Bible went. So that is the single book that had the influence on the most people in the history of the world. And surely God would have made sure that that book is accurate, and that that influence was accurate. And then when I got that book, that file, and put in 42 and get out 7, it's a confirmation for me that every dot, everything is accurate in that file. Now, just a quick description of how all these books were copied. So you would have had an original version, and then in using it, people were also making copies of it. So there was handwritten copies. So you've got multiple copies, and then copies of those copies were made, and copies of those copies. So if you want to have the correct version, you would look at all the copies you could get, because they represent all the branches. And if you take 10 of these and you compare them and 9 agree and 1 is wrong, then you reject the wrong one. But you've got a lot of these handwritten copies to select from, and they did this when they did the King James translation. But then somehow in 1900, people thought, but surely an older copy is more accurate and closer to the source. And what they then did is they rejected the notion that when you make copies of the Bible and you use it every day, that copy won't survive 300 years because it's been used. So you have to make a copy of it and then use that copy. But occasionally, as represented by the red lines, you get a really bad copy. And then that bad copy gets rejected and maybe shoved somewhere into the corner. And because it's not used, it survives maybe 1,000 years. And now they go into some monastery, get a 1,000-year-old copy and say, because it's older, it must be more accurate, which is so wrong. It's actually, because it's older, it survived because it was just a very, very bad copy. And now that older copy is being used for most of the modern translations. Now, don't take my word for it. There's somebody that can explain this much better than I did. And I'll put the link below and try and put the link onto the screen so you can go and have a look at that. But as far as I'm concerned, the King James Bible is the one that I trust. And sadly, this is also some of the I think this was one bad translation, was a Greek translation. And now when you compare and you go back to the original Greek, sometimes you get the bad copy, and then you think, yeah, but that's closer to the source, I'll trust that, which is just simply doesn't make sense to me. So thank you for listening, and please have a look at this other video. He explains it really nicely.